Good morning, travel industry. My name is Dave Bratton, and I'm Managing Director at Destination Analyst here. I have the pleasure today of presenting to you our Coronavirus Travel Sentiment Index Report data for the week of September 7th. Here today to give Aaron, who most of you know has been doing this every week, a little bit of a break. So I'm going to flip the script a little bit today and switch things around. And I want to start with a little trivia challenge for you all. I know you're all very very smart people. So I have some trivia I want to do with you. So if you want to participate in this challenge, why don't you find the chat box, and when you think you know the answer to my question, type it in the chat box. And the first person to give an answer that's correct will win a fabulous prize. So let's begin. I'm going to show you a picture, actually 3 pictures. And what I want you to do is tell me what they all 3 have in common. Here we go.
Well, we have some good guesses so far, Dave, but nothing close, I would say.
Nothing close. Okay, well, we'll move on then. Not much time to answer, but the correct answer is, over here, 26. The state of Michigan, the amazing state of Michigan, was our 26th state. Teddy Roosevelt, our 26th president, and the human foot, if you can believe it, has 26 bones. Little unimportant trivia for you today, but important in that we've been at this for quite a while. So we have a real interesting data set built up over the last 26 weeks of data we've collected, and I'm going to share the 26th week with you. Just a reminder, this is independent, unbiased research. We conduct it on our own without help or influence from anyone, so you can count on it to not be modified in any way to meet anyone's agenda. Today online, I have 2 of my colleagues with me, Aaron Francis Cummings, our president and CEO, and Miha Gallagher, our senior research director. They're here to answer your questions. If you have any, just type them in the chat box for us. And the last half of the session, Aaron will be discussing issues related to summer travel, with the panel of people who actually traveled. The presentation deck is available online, so no worry about taking notes or whatever. So our summer travelers that you're going to see in the last half hour here are Mike, Stephanie, Danny, and Emily, and they're going to tell us about what it's like out there on the road. I'd like to thank our sponsors too, the organizations that have subscribed to our research or donated here. Without you, we couldn't possibly do this, and our whole team is extremely grateful to you. And I know it's a hard time for everyone, but if you could consider subscribing or donating, please do so. Subscribers, right now your dashboards are ready, so you can go dig in and tear the data up as much as you want right now. And let's just do a quick agenda. Today we're going to look at our Travel Marketing Potential Influence Index after I go through the findings. And then, as I said, Aaron will walk you through what's happening out there from the perspective of some actual travelers. And they have some interesting stories, so I hope you'll hang around for that. The research is, as you probably know, 1,200 completed surveys of a nationally representative sample. We collect 300 in each of the 4 census regions you see here. This was just collected a few days ago on the 4th to the 6th. And the data is reweighted around these census regions, so you can have a lot of confidence that this is a nationally rep sample you're looking at today with a confidence interval of about plus or minus 2.8%. And as always, let's talk a little bit about the news, what people were seeing in the news before and during survey collection. This week we had 6.2 million cases and 187,000 deaths we have reached from COVID-19. There were a variety of different news stories out there, from a lot of confusion travelers are facing when they're looking at rules for going to different places within the United States. And we asked some questions on this, and I'll just tease you with it that we're going to tell you how many travelers actually bothered to research these things before they took their trip this summer. New York has some really good news in that only 1% of its viral tests have turned out positive for 30 days in a row now, which is fantastic. But our former head of the FDA was on TV this weekend talking about how if we do have a vaccine, it's not likely that it'll be available in any widespread way this year, maybe early next year. And interestingly, there was a bunch of results out there from different surveys talking to people about whether they would actually take a vaccine if it were available. And we see that that number is falling, according to this poll, from 32% in July to 21% now, saying they'd want to take a vaccine as soon as possible. Another interesting question at the bottom: if there's a vaccine this year, what would your first thought be? That it's either a scientific achievement or rushed through? And by a 2-to-1 ratio, people answered that it would be rushed through. Kind of gives you a sense of how diminished our trust in our institutions right now is. And it's definitely something our industry needs to keep an eye on. Although I hate this question as a survey researcher, but anyway. Some good news, I think, is that the industry is continuing to show its amazing resilience and creativity. This is the third major recession I've been through as a tourism professional, and it's really feels wonderful to see all the great things that people are out there doing in our very, very creative industry. And one of the fun things that we see this week were schoolcation offerings. Disney World has a great schoolcation offering where you can go and study the kids can study during the day and then go to the water park in the evening. And the Four Seasons Punta Mita in Puerto Vallarta has an amazing package where you can bring your kids down there and they can study during the day. And I just want to read you a little bit of this because this blew me away when I saw it. You can rent a cabana near the beach where the kids can work with Wi-Fi equipped large TV monitors, headphones, and snacks. But even better, they're hosting a range of complimentary courses that highlight the local area and its heritage, including arts and crafts workshops to create huichol-inspired dream catchers and butterfly kites, as well as zapateado dancing lessons, Spanish classes for those both newbie and advanced. Nature lovers can assist with seasonal sea turtle releases, forage in the bay for kelp and mollusks, and learn the indigenous plants and animals on an eco walk. Amazing stuff. I'm a little bit older. I went to school in the 60s and 70s, and when I saw this, it blew me away because our idea, probably the closest thing we had to a staycation, was what we call detention. And the idea we had of cultural enlightenment was simply scampering home after class and watching Bugs Bunny cartoons. So kids certainly have a lot more going on in this day and age. And obviously this is a very affluent crowd that's going to do this. But as we saw last week in our research, there are a lot of parents out there that are considering schoolcations. So let's talk about what's going on out in the real world. I don't know about you, but I felt like all three of these pictures at some point over the last 4 months. And one of the things in this survey that we've been wanting to do but haven't been able to do is talk to people about their past trips. What have you done recently on the road? And the reason for that is that we were afraid we'd have a subsample size that was really too small to talk about what people have been doing with any clarity or any confidence. And that was because just in the early months of this, not many people were out on the road, but we've gotten to the point where we can do that now. So we asked questions about summer travel, and that's what I'm going to start with today. 13% of us took a weekend trip this Labor Day. And what we see over the course of the summer, that from 13% of travelers taking a trip in June, jumped up to 20.2 in July and 18.5 in August. We're expecting 20% when September gets wrapped up. That's a hybrid of actual travel to date and expectations in the future. And then it drops off to 13, 12, and 11 for October, November, and December. So a little bit of a picture forward. There's some data I wanted to share with you from secondary sources, which I think kind of also will help paint a picture of what's going on out there. What you see here is 2019 in orange and 2020 from March until now. Data from the TSA on checkpoint counts, how many people went through their checkpoints at airports. And you can see that in July, we were down quite a bit, 74%. But leading up to it, we had some good growth in the number of people that were taking plane trips, basically. In the last month available here is 69%, down a bit. But we can see that most of that is a result of last year's volume beginning to fall as summer season ended, not so much any growth in actual travel this year. Let's talk about national parks too. This has been an area of high interest because it seems like the word on the street is that all our national parks have been full up this year. But what we see is a story that's very similar to what we see in a lot of other data, in that some places are doing very well, some places are not doing very well. And a lot of that's dependent on rules around travel in the particular destinations. Let's just look at some data real quickly. And what you see here is the same thing. It's 2019 in orange, 2020 in blue. And we can see, for example, Mount Rushmore National Monument has done great. They're almost where they were last year. You know, what pandemic, you might ask, if you're working at the gate of Mount Rushmore. Grand Teton National Park similarly did very well, as did Yellowstone, actually exceeding July levels in terms of recreational visits from last year. That's interesting. But here's the thing, it's different this year, and this is really shown in Yellowstone. We see here that in July, for example, we exceeded the number of recreational visits, but how many buses brought people into the park, excuse me. You can see here in 2019, we had about 2,300 buses in June, a little less in July. No activity or very little this year, as you can see by the line down there. So real interesting change in visitor patterns in the park. The Blue Ridge Parkway has been doing great. Cape Hatteras has been doing great. Great Smoky Mountains the last 2 months, you know, are above what we saw last year. Cape Cod National Seashore similarly. So a lot of really impressive performance of our parks, but it's not universal. Take, for example, Acadia, a little bit further north from Boston than Cape Cod, has not been doing so well. Point Reyes National Seashore in San Francisco Bay Area is an amazing story here. Those of you who are familiar with what's been going on out here in California, we have been locked down since March in the Bay Area. And there was very little traffic out to Point Reyes, which is about an hour north of the city. But you can see once that released, it just went through the roof with demand for that particular park. Yosemite, similarly, in the most recent month available of July, we see that we're about 250,000 visitors short from last year. Clearly connected, I would think, from San Francisco being basically locked down and not having its tourism industry working in any functional way this summer. Many travelers that come here, international and domestic, end up taking a side trip to Yosemite. Redwood National Park, similarly. In the Grand Canyon, 3 of its 4 entrances have been closed this year, and it's way down. As well as Las Vegas, a major feeder market to it, being shut down in many ways for most of this period. So we see in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park similar. So we see a very big disparity in parks here. And I really think it just shows that the demand for travel is there. It continues to find its expression in the marketplace at levels that it can, you know, and destinations where it's able to too, but it's facing some very serious constraints put upon it by the pandemic. And if you don't believe me, even San Francisco's got its thing going on. This weekend was a horror story here for air quality. As you know, there have been wildfires all over California, and you can see the air quality map 2 days ago. I live where this yellow arrow is pointing, and I'm just going to show you a picture from outside my house, 2 blocks down the street, and right outside the street. Fishermen's Wharf. No idea what they're doing down there. And the line for Lombard Street that you can see on the right is 4 blocks long of cars waiting to drive over all day long. So a lot of people even here that are wanting to get out and enjoy tourism. So let's talk about the summer some more. Have you taken any leisure trips this summer? 34.5% of us said, yeah, I did take a leisure trip. And 26% of us took a staycation. And you can see the months that these people took the trips. This is the same data you saw earlier, just this is the base on this is travelers. So in July, 58% of people who traveled this summer took a trip. They took 2.0 trips on average, and most of them were overnight trips, interestingly. Only 18.5% of travelers did not take an overnight trip this summer, which is really interesting. And I think it's an area we need to explore a bit further, what kind of psychology we have going on here between overnight and day trips during a pandemic. Where did they stay while they were on the trip? Well, private home of a friend or relative, number one, for full service hotel, 3-star hotel, number two, budget and luxury hotels a little bit below that. Interestingly, 10% of us this summer stayed in a campground or RV park. Now, this is interesting to me because this is nearly twice what we saw at the very first survey we did in March, when we asked if they had stayed in a campground or park in the last 2 years. So we're comparing a 2-year period at about 5% to just a 3-month period at about 10%. So a big jump in demand for that type of travel. What destinations they visited: beach destinations, small towns, number 1 and 2, state and county regional parks, recreation areas, and then cities and metropolitan areas. And as we've talked about in the past, you know, cities are king in American leisure travel, and this is a big change from what we would typically see in a normal period of time. So prior to your most recent leisure trip, did you research the coronavirus-related rules and regulations, masks, restaurant protocols, quarantine laws for the destination you visited? 67.6% of us said they did, which is interesting. 1 in 3 of us didn't even do that. So I'm not sure what to make of this. And I think it's another point that this week I'd like to dig in further and kind of figure out what that exactly means. In terms of the planning resources they used, the biggest one are online content, of course, opinions of friends and relatives. We had some questions come in about streaming video and broadcast TV. You can see those down at the bottom. And I think this week, again, we'll explore this with a different set of planning resources and see what we find. Where they went: Florida, California, and Texas were the top states. And one thing that struck me recently, my amazing friend and business partner, Erin, who you all probably know very well, took a trip by plane a month or 2 ago. And she wouldn't tell me about it because she thought I'd be mad at her. But interestingly, afterwards, she's been talking a lot more about travel. And I got the sense that taking a trip by plane really, gave her a lot of confidence in whether she could travel or not safely. So I wanted to explore that on this survey and see how people are feeling about it. And we've done this a few times, that we see that only 28% of us feel confident or very confident they can travel right now safely, 46% not. But this week we asked this question: did taking this trip make you less or more confident that you can travel safely in the time of the coronavirus? And almost half, 49% of us said, yep, it's made me more confident that I can travel safely. So my hope is that people will, of course, travel safely, but it's possible that this travel we've been seeing in recent months will lead to more travel, and that people will feel better kind of once you get out there and see you can do it. They'll start traveling more and talking to people about travel, and things will snowball from that point. Let's talk about summer in the sky. We asked people if they traveled in the summer, and then if they did, if they took a plane trip. 30.2% of us said, yeah, they had traveled by a commercial airline. And most of them were very satisfied with what they saw on the plane. In general, how satisfied were you with the safety protocols put in place by your airline? 86% said, yeah. So that's an excellent performance level, I would think. Only 6.1% have walked away unsatisfied with the airline's protocols. Even though 60%, 59.6, had somebody in a seat next to them on at least one of their flights, and they were comfortable with the number of people on board their flight. 70.3% said yeah, compared to only about 15% who were not comfortable with the number of people on their flight. Thinking exclusively about coronavirus concerns, at any point on your most recent airline trip, did you feel unsafe on board an airplane? Half of us did, though, at some point. And in the actual airports, similarly, 44% 54%, 54.7%. Said they felt some safety concerns in airports. So even though satisfaction seems to be high, there's obviously work that needs to be done to keep our customers feeling good about being on planes. So let's move on and talk about the metrics we've been tracking to test the mood of travelers in America right now. You guys have probably all seen this before, but I'm planning to avoid all travel until the coronavirus situation blows over. Do you agree with it or disagree with it? We can see that 53.4% of us now agree with that. And the last couple of weeks, we've had some improvement, a relatively big one, statistically speaking, from 62% down to 53% saying that they agree with that. So that's movement in the right direction. Won't travel without a vaccine. 42% of us say they agree with that or strongly agree with it. And that's been fairly stable over recent months. This is something that I would like to explore further this week too, to look at whether people will actually take a vaccine when it comes out and try to get us a better understanding of that all. Right now, about 22% of us are ready to travel with no hesitations. Seem to be holding relatively constant. 45% of us just say we'll need more time. Personal health concerns were down a little bit this week on our 11-point scale from not at all concerned to 10 being extremely concerned. 67% were in the upper half here from 6 to 10. A little bit of an increase too in worry about friends and family's health. Down for personal financial concerns, a good chunk from 62 to 55, but concerns about the national economy were up just a little bit to 81%. Now let's look at our national anxiety map a little bit again. And this shows the time series for those 4 pieces of data I just showed you from March 13th to a couple days ago. We can see that the national economy is the thing we're worried about most. Personal finances, considerably lower than that. And in between the two, we have friends and family and personal health. And this is again, the average, the percent that said it was a 10 or a 6 on the concern scale. Now, what do we make of this recently? If we look back 2 months ago to where we were for each of these, we can see that for each of them, we're down modestly. We've seen some improvement over the past 2 months. Not a huge change. It's a bit of a stagnant situation, but we're moving in the right direction in a modest decrease pattern. Okay, we give the survey respondents a variety of different travel activities, specific activities, from traveling on a cruise line, taking a motor bus trip, to non-team outdoor recreation and road trips, and ask them to rate them from very unsafe to very safe right now. This week, we have an average score of 50.3% for all of these activities. And let's just look at how that's changed over time. We can see right here that, as you've seen in this, if you've been here at all, increasing safety concerns early on, very sharp increases, but then there was a long period where people were feeling more safe about each of these activities on average. That relapsed a bit after the reopening and the problems we faced there. But then we've been in a decreasing safety concerns for quite a while now. So this is looking really good at the moment. If you look back, we're almost where we were when we started this adventure in the first week of the survey. So definitely some positive progress there in terms of how people are feeling about the safety of individual activities they do in travel. Expectations for the outbreak this week were flat, same as last week. And it's a similar story to what we saw before in terms of those that feel this next month is going to get worse or much worse. It was growing rapidly at the start and then dropped off and was stagnant for a while, grew rapidly again after the reopening. But we've been in a long, extended positive period where people are feeling better about the next month. Still, more people are think it's going to get worse than better. But comparing back to July, we're in much better position. Excitement to travel in the moment is down a little bit this week, not a lot, a couple points. And openness to new travel information and ideas is up just a little bit. Again, just a couple points this week. And here is the chart that you've seen before, probably. It shows even if tentatively scheduled, in which months of the year do you currently plan to take any leisure trips? And we can see that from September through April of next year, we have about 10% of travelers saying they've got a trip at least tentatively planned, and then a bunch after that. So, all right, one last thing before we get to our indices is business travel. A lot of you I know live and die by conventions or business travel. So we asked in the summer, have you taken a business trip? And 8% of travelers said, yeah, they had. 7.6% had visited a destination for a convention, conference, or some sort of group meeting. Keep in mind, summer is often wedding season, so probably a lot of people attending events like that, but still less than 1 in 10 for both. We asked respondents then who were employed or part-time or full-time if their organization had people that traveled. So about half of people work for of employed travelers work for a company, that sends people out on the road. And among those, we asked, to your knowledge, have people at the company begun traveling again? And only 1 in 4 said yes, they had. And then has the company or organization you work for given any indication of when it will begin again? Only 9% said yeah, they had. And those that had not, we asked when they thought travelers would be back out on the road. And it looks like, about a quarter are seeing it early next year, and then almost most sometime after April. So seems like a little bit of uncertainty here going on, that companies that have people out on the road for business just by and large haven't made up their mind yet when they're going to do it, and it doesn't seem like it's a pressing issue to get back out on the road for most. So, and the data we've seen on people's interest in attending conventions during the pandemic has been consistently and stubbornly high in terms of the percent that say they won't be likely to attend group meetings until the situation's resolved. So let us talk about the coronavirus travel sentiment indices a little bit. You guys who have been with us know that we put these indices together to try to be able to look at individual segments and see who is most likely to be traveling now, and give us a sense for where we want to be putting our marketing dollars and our marketing focus. As you know, this has been relatively stagnant, like a lot of this data over the course of the pandemic. Our hope is that as things start to break loose this fall, it'll become even more colorful. But the index consists of 4 data points: your concern for your personal health, your concern for personal finances, your openness to travel ideas and messaging, and your excitement to travel right now. So we combine all these, weight them equally. Every respondent gets a score from 0 to 100. 0 means they are absolutely not going to be out on the road at all. 100 is somebody that's ready to go. What we see in a normal time period when we ask survey questions or set up survey algorithms like this, typically most people are over in the potentially marketable or ready to travel areas here on the right, just past neutrality here for the potentially marketable. And what we've seen through this shows recent waves of our survey. We've seen people moving to the right, not huge movements, but there's definitely been some movement. Each of the segments we track here, you can see charted over time. And we're getting closer and closer to most of them coming into the potentially marketable phase. Now, let's just look at a few. Airline and cruise travelers. These are people who take air trips and people who take cruises. You can see in the blue here, air travelers is slightly above cruise travelers this month. But the thing I wanted to point out to you guys as you use this data is up above. And what you see in the chart up above are the percent of people in this segment, in the 2 segments, that are above the 25 line, that those are the ones that are at least potentially marketable right now. The numbers that make up these 2 lines you see here are the average score for the segment. So that doesn't mean everybody's on that average. There are people above and below it. So right now, about 32% of both of these groups are in the potentially marketable category here. And you can see over time, this has improved. If you just look back to the early waves, we're quite a bit up from where we were before, still nowhere near where we want to be. Obviously, genders have have traveled together pretty much right now. The female travelers are reporting a little bit lower likelihood to be marketable than men. And you can see it over here in the proportions above 29% to 34% for men. By generation, right now, you can see that the baby boomers have dropped down. We were doing pretty good a couple weeks ago relative to the other two, but things have turned south there. And you can see, if you look at the top, that by far the generation most likely to be in the potentially marketable phase are millennials and younger travelers. US regions, there's quite a bit of difference between them. The green here, Midwest, the, I guess it's kind of burnt orange, is the South, are quite a bit higher than the Midwest, than the Northeast and West. And that's really visible up here at the top. You can see a big difference there. And also by place of residence, we see that urban and suburban travelers are quite a bit lower than rural travelers right now. The average rural traveler is now in the potentially marketable phase. The average urban traveler is quite a bit off that. And let's just do our final one, which is lodging. We see here this similar story that we've seen before. The camper, the campground person tends to have a lot of volatility in it. And a lot of that, I'll tell you guys, is due to the sample size we have of people camping. But they're right now almost more than half reported this week that they are in the potentially marketable phase. So that is it for the data this week. I will see you guys next Tuesday. I'm going to hand it off to Erin right now, and she's going to introduce you to our panel.
Yep, and just as a reminder, we release these findings every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern via email, and you and your colleagues are always welcome to join us here on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern for a more in-depth update. And of course, we welcome you to send us your suggestions or requests for questions to add to this weekly survey. You can go ahead and do that. Send it to info@destinationanalyst.com. And we also are able to make 15-minute condensed presentations of these updates for your board of directors or stakeholders. Please reach out to us on that. And reminder that we have a number of resources to help you with your tourism recovery efforts. Also, if you need benchmarks from pre-pandemic times or other research on performance of different marketing assets, we have that all available to you on our website. And of course, we can put together a lot of stats for your tourism recovery or grant application efforts. All right, it is my great pleasure to welcome Mike, Stephanie, Danny, and Emily with us today, our panel of summer travelers. If you haven't already, please, I think Stephanie, we still need your video, and you're welcome to unmute shortly. I am going to have you all introduce yourself to the audience by giving us a highlight reel of the summer trip that you took. And for our industry audience, please feel free to use the chat and the Q&A to get your questions that you would like to ask of these real travelers. Please take advantage of the opportunity to talk directly to these potential customers. All right, Mike, let's start with you. Can you give us the highlight reel of your summer vacation?
I live in Myrtle Beach. My wife is from Thailand, so she had never really been in the East Coast and has very little knowledge of the rich history that we have here, the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. So I decided to take her down to Charleston, South Carolina last weekend, and we just lucked into our first stop, which was the old jail and the courthouse, which was built in the late 1600s. And interestingly, it was built by the British. They controlled Charleston at that time, and they built a jailhouse down in the basement to house political dissidents. There was starting to be, in the early 1700s, revolutionary thoughts. So we actually got to visit the jail that they house these people in, which was very interesting. That was about an hour-long presentation, a tour. Everybody had to wear masks, and there was only one other family in the tour, so I felt very safe. The second place we visited was Middleton Plantation, which is a 1700s plantation just south on the Ashley River. There are several plantations down there. We toured the gardens. We toured where the rice fields where actually grew rice, and we were a little cautious. They had a boat tour where you could ride around the rice fields, which are now flooded, but nobody was wearing masks, and the boats were pretty crowded. And then they had a trolley also that went all the way around the gardens, and there were probably 100 people on the trolleys, and nobody was wearing masks. So we decided not to do those two things because of our concern. The next thing we did was we went to Patriots Point, which is a naval area in Charleston. The aircraft carrier Yorktown is there, which was built in the early stages of World War II, and then actually served in Vietnam. Everybody had to wear masks. There were a lot of people on the Yorktown. And then after the Yorktown, we went to about a half-hour presentation on Vietnam. There was a movie and lots of rich history, and everybody had to wear a mask there too. So we felt very safe. And then we ate Southern barbecue, which was great, and we felt safe there because they only had every third table was filled. So I guess the whole time we were down there, we were carrying hand sanitizer, we were wearing a mask, and I never really felt threatened. Like I said, we didn't go on the boat and we didn't go on the trolley because we felt it was too crowded.
Okay, really interesting. All right, Stephanie, can you share with us your highlight reel of your summer vacation?
Yes, and I don't have a fancy, oh, you guys did it for me, sweet. So I drove to Nebraska with my 4 children, and I'm trying to think. We mostly just stopped for gas along the way. There wasn't any like major destinations that we stopped at along the way. We also stopped in Colorado. That was not really our halfway point, but that's where we decided to rest and before we finished the second half of our drive.
Why did you choose Nebraska?
My best friend lives there, so we were going. The main point of the trip was to go visit her since she wasn't going to get to come see us for the year.
Okay.
And we figured since with COVID and everything, I didn't think as many people would be traveling. So I did that was one of the key points as to why I decided to go ahead and travel right now.
Okay. And is that what you ended up experiencing? Or did you?
Yeah, there wasn't, since we didn't stay in hotels, I didn't really get to see anybody outside of gas trips and, bathroom trips. And there really wasn't that many people, and the ones that were definitely kept their distance and had their masks on. So it was kind of painless. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephanie. All right, Danny, you're up next. Can you give us the highlight reel of summer vacation 2020?
Yeah, I'm from Houston. I'm Danny, by the way. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I live with my wife and the 3-year-old girl. I've been locked down since mid-March, and we had a few short trips within the Texas. But usually in the summertime, we fly to the California. We fly to the national park. We already planned to go to the Canyonlands in this summer, but we are so we are so feeling guilty to do that actually. Yeah, in
Interesting.
the 1st of July. So we just forced to cancel it. Yeah, that was very unfortunate. Yeah, but
Can you share with us real quick, because I think that's probably interesting for the travel industry to hear. Can you just share with us more about your guilt? Because we hear that from travelers, but if you could tell us more specifically about what made you feel guilty that you canceled your trip?
yeah, so we share our ideas about how we're going to have a trip with a friend and to the church people. And then most of people, the reaction was, you guys are joking. Yeah, it was, yeah, they are not welcoming. And then most of people, you guys, I don't know, they didn't say that. They didn't say anything, the bad thing. They didn't say that you guys making this really seriously bad. Well, they didn't say anything bad, but the reaction was not welcoming. And then the reaction was like, oh my gosh, you guys so crazy with a baby. You guys are not with a traveling with a 3-year-old girl to the Canyonlands. And we had a quite bit of research on that area, on the Utah area, how's the coronavirus rate and then how's the situation in there. But it looks like okay. And then we had confidence that we could have a social distance, and we are going to stay in the vehicle and then mostly in the outside. And then we also had a plan to stay in the hotel at the night, not, going out in the crowded place. But I don't know, we are so feeling guilty because most of people's reaction was really bad. And by the time, and then the coronavirus were really getting worse and worse in the early summer. Maybe you guys remember that the early summer, it was almost like a second peak. And then Texas was really, really bad. After the Memorial Day weekend, Memorial Day holiday, it was really, really bad. So yeah, we decided to cancel it. It was very unfortunate, yeah. But yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we drive to the South Padre Island in the end of the Texas, south end of the Texas. It was really good. And then it's so much better than I thought because it is very rural area. And then my wife really worried that if she heard that some rural Texas people, they don't care about the coronavirus. They don't wear masks or something. But mostly hotel was very clean. I was really surprised to see that. Hotel was extremely clean and yeah. And then most of people try to avoid the elevator if they can. And then I feel very safe. Even in the beach was really good. And then most of people have a social distance at the beach in the South Padre Island. I was really surprised to see that we are really comfortable. Okay, that was good. And the other night, the very next night, my wife heard that there is a firework. And then you can see the photo in the left panel, the left down, and we took a picture. But it was totally different story. It was like a summer of 2019.
Oh, interesting. So crowded and.
Yeah, it's a crowded. People don't wear a mask at all. It was just like a, oh my gosh, I was almost like forgot actually. Yeah, it was just typical summer night 2019.
Yeah. What's your sense of why what you experienced during the day was so different from the nighttime?
Yes. I guess that's my guess. So the South Padre Island, the one side is beach, and the other side is a bar and restaurant and the very, everything. Some clubs as well. And the beach part is mostly the family friendly. It is very quiet, mostly family. And the other part is, yeah, it's a lot of young people because it was vacation time. And then I didn't see many, older people, but a lot of young generation people, they don't wear a mask. And yeah, it seems like they really don't care about that. So I don't know. That's my guess. That's my guess. But it was too late to get out of the place because we are stuck in the middle of it. Yeah, but yeah, we tried to have a social distance. Of course, it didn't work. But yeah. Well,
So Danny brought up something really interesting, and I just want to get a show of hands from all of you. He said that people's reaction to him traveling was this, "Are you crazy? And why would you risk that?" Did any of you experience that about your travel this summer? Just by a show of hands, any of that what we would call travel shaming? You did, Emily. Okay, but not Stephanie and Mike. You didn't. Okay, really interesting. All right. Well, thank you, Danny. Emily, let's have you do your highlight reel of the COVID summer vacation.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm from San Francisco. I went out to Scottsdale, Arizona this summer in late June to celebrate my 30th birthday with friends. I went to college out there, so majority of my friends are still in that Phoenix area. And it was also my best friend's daughter's first birthday, so that was kind of what took me out to Arizona. When I went there, I stayed with friends, so I didn't stay in a hotel, but I did fly out there, so I experienced the airport. I, kind of did some research before, just Google searched, like, is it safe? Talked to some friends who had traveled via plane already during the pandemic. And I thought the airlines were very communicative with us about, like, this is the precautions that we're taking. And the airport was just very empty. So my experience was kind of just like, it was like a normal travel experience, but just way less people. And when I was in Arizona, I went out to dinner a few times. That was the first time I'd been out to dinner during the quarantine and the pandemic. So that was an interesting experience, but mainly just kind of stayed around my friends' houses, their pools, and, spent a little bit of time outside, some shopping. Things were pretty much in full swing out there. So it was very different than where I am in California. But yeah, it was interesting. It felt way more normal than I was expecting.
And did you observe anything that made you feel unsafe, or something that made you feel like it was very different?
I guess I was shocked that, like, airlines weren't taking temperatures as people were boarding, or, like, I don't know, I guess I expected somebody to be at the front, like, making sure everyone had a mask on, and I think for the most part people were, but it just felt way more lax. Like, at security, nobody was wiping down the bins, or I don't know, there wasn't somebody sanitizing the escalators or any, like, it didn't seem like there was any more like sanitation going on. So that kind of made me feel a little bit unsafe. So I just, like, was prepared with my Clorox wipes and my hand sanitizer and double masked myself and that kind of thing.
Do you all feel, thank you, Emily, for the highlight reel. We can, and Dave, we can turn off the PowerPoint now. Do you all feel like your trip, like what you were spending, like while you were on your vacation, do you feel like your trip spending, like, was different than it normally would be when you were on vacation? Emily, you're saying yes. Can you share with us how it's different and why?
You're talking about money, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I spent way less. It was almost like I was, kind of still at home. Just, I didn't eat out as much. I wasn't doing anything extravagant. Didn't spend money on hotels, on, spa or anything like that, like I might want to on a vacation, because nothing was really open in that regard.
Danny, you're also nodding. Is there anything?
Yeah. Because we usually very open to the luxury hotel, nicer hotel. We actually like to stay in the very nice hotel, clean hotel. But And right now we decide to stay in the hotel with the kitchen because we want to, you know, if the restaurant is not available in that area, we want to have a cooking inside the hotel. So I think the hotel is much less right now for us. Yeah, I think that's the main reason. And then also, we don't go out with a very nice restaurant in the local restaurant very often when we travel. So I think we are spending less.
How long do you think that will continue? That you're not spending as much on restaurants when you travel?
Yeah, actually, we spend a lot of money on the on the restaurant usually, but well, actually, we had a short trip in the Austin yesterday, and then this time we didn't cook at the hotel, even though we are staying in the hotel with a kitchen. But it was so much better than I thought. It was much safe, and people were wearing masks. I was really surprised to see that in the staffs and the chef, they all wear the mask. And then most of customers, they have a social distance. And we even dined out a couple of restaurants. Some of the restaurants, they only, it was only for the takeout, but some of the couple of restaurants, very nice restaurant, they have option to dine in. So we did actually. But in the South Padre trip, and then yeah, it was not like that. It was not like that. We could the restaurant, most the nice restaurants are closed, and then we are forced to have just takeout orders like tacos and yeah, fast food.
So all of you, looking ahead, as you saw, we found in our survey that people who had traveled like you all did, there was a net increase in their confidence that they could travel safely. Did you feel that way after your trip? Okay, Laura nodding. Are you planning trips now? Do any of you have active trips that you're planning?
No.
Okay.
I flew out to Denver in June, which was pretty much the height of COVID, and the United flight I was on was absolutely packed. There were no empty seats. Everybody was wearing a mask though, and I never got COVID. So based on that, I felt like travel was safer from that point on.
And Mike, as you saw too, we're seeing that baby boomers, I mean, initially they weren't that different, and then there was a turning point, and we've seen their baby boomers be a lot more. They're just not indexing for travel as high as some of the other generations, typically week to week. Is that something that you've seen amongst your network of baby boomer travelers?
I've only flown twice. The first time I flew to Taiwan, which was like 28 hours, and there was distancing there in between the seats, but the second time was to Denver and everybody was packed. I haven't flown since then. We drove to Charleston and I drove to another place. So I think the airlines are cleaning the seats.
Well, it's interesting that none of you have trips that you're planning now. Of course, the travel industry doesn't like to hear that. And so one of the really important things that we would love to learn from you is what is going to inspire you to think about taking your next trip? Stephanie, what about you? What do you think would inspire you to start planning?
So it's not so much that I haven't planned one, I just don't have I would say I'm planning lots of trips, just not the date part yet. And the only reason for that is that we have 20 animals and 4 children. Not that easy to leave. but we have begun, like, now that I know that it isn't that dangerous, I have tried to like pitch it to my husband, like, hey, you know, we could take that trip to New Orleans because it doesn't seem that dangerous. Like, so we're definitely in that direction of trying to plan. We just haven't like begun picking a date or anything yet.
Okay, so that's interesting because you took a road trip, but now you feel it's safe to fly. That experience.
I think I was a little bit hesitant for flying initially, but it seems like more people are on the road than flying. And when, like, what I've heard, the people that are flying have their masks, they're being careful, so I'm not too worried about it.
Okay. Emily, what about you? What would inspire you to start planning another trip?
So there are a bunch of things. I got coronavirus on my trip. So flying, I don't know if I got on the airplane or where, but since I got it, I live with people and I am just kind of being more cautious now. Like, I can't be responsible for exposing more people to the virus. That was a really, really tough, like, 3 weeks where I had to stay in my room.
Sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're recovered.
Yeah, so I actually did, you know, have kind of a poor experience. And so that has kind of affected my, like, travel plans, and I'm just planning on staying close to home and, you know, only driving places for the near future.
Emily, do you have a sense of what might, and again, I'm sorry to hear that you got COVID on your trip. Do you have a sense of when you might, what would be like an indicator to you, like, okay, I am going to be willing to come out of my hometown?
I think if I didn't live with people, if there was a vaccine, something needs to change and be more certain.
Okay. Danny, what about you? What's going to inspire you to start traveling or planning your next trip?
We are thinking a couple of trips. One is in the Thanksgiving. We thought we went to the Death Valley National Park last year, and then we decided to come back this year, Thanksgiving. But we are still open it. And then we will see what's going on because the scientists say that in the cold weather, it could be getting worse with the flu. So we wanted to see that, how things going with that, you know, because we are going into the winter time. And then I want to see that because the Death Valley, even though Death Valley is not very cold region, but the Vegas is kind of, yeah. And then we definitely we definitely want to go to Lake Tahoe this Christmas, yeah. But we'll see. But I think it depends. Well, we definitely go to the Lake Tahoe in the Christmas, but we like to see that how things going with of course, with the vaccine, but the FDA, as a presentation, the FDA commissioner said that 1/3 of people still, I mean, the vaccine will not be completely available until 2021. So we will see how things going well with the winter time.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your morning with us. It's so amazing to learn and hear directly from you and your experiences this summer. We are at time, so I want to wish you a wonderful rest of the week. And for our audience, please if you have any follow-up questions you'd like us to address, do send us an email, and of course, send us your ideas for this week's survey. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone back online with us next Tuesday. Again, Stephanie, Emily, Danny, Mike, it was our great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you again. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.